is kind of one nice thing about getting everything on YouTube. I was able to number all of them, so we know which one we're at. We're gonna have to do something cool for number 50, I guess. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what that would be, but yeah, we're getting close there. So I guess that means we've been doing them for about a year-ish, pretty close to it, which is pretty fun. Probably, let's see, we should be high. Yeah, we probably been doing them over a year, I think, if you include all the weeks that we missed. So that's kind of cool because we actually started doing them before the first Viking era started. But as far as what we have to discuss today, there is some updates coming to the handbook and the pocket guide. I wouldn't say it's a massive update, but probably bigger than some of the other ones. My big thing was I went through with the handbook and I was trying to just make everything a little bit more concise. I think the length went down. It's like 10 and a half pages or so, which I know some new recruits read that and they're like, oh, this is kind of a lot. But I mean, the point is that it's like our constitution, kind of. Like, it lists everything. So if there's like, we're, looking at does something break the rules or whatever, we have this entire thing that we can go through. And it kind of talks about every little part of WA. So you don't necessarily like always need to be looking at the entire thing, but it's supposed to be pretty exhaustive. But yeah, I did try to be more concise with some of it, and added on a couple updates, like sections about the guilds. That was one thing, and some updates there, talking about how I kind of moved on the forums. I moved all the important threads into the monolith subforum, and it mentions that in the handbook. The bigger update might be to the pocket guide, which I tried to keep it down to one page, so it's real easy to go over. It just has the very essential information. And then all both those updates, I posted them in the all thing. People have been reading them, going through, mentioning stuff we can update. So I think we're probably good to go on that. I was just talking to QCAG. I went over the official recruiting guide too, and I think that's already up to date and everything. Because the thing about that recruiting guide is it doesn't really have specific info about WA that we need to update, like a list of warbands or anything. Because the recruiting guide is supposed to be how do I recruit, not necessarily like because you're supposed to be telling your recruit about WA. So if we included in the recruiting guide everything about WA you need to tell your recruit, it'd probably be like 10 pages too. So it's easier. Recruiting guide just tells you how to do it, and then we have the handbook, just like the exhaustive, set information on WA, and then we have the pocket guide, which lists just like the basic bare bones information. But all that stuff should be getting updated really soon. So that's kind of the big thing. One thing I am going to try to do with the handbook is I'm going to add, I was just saying, these image headings. So kind of like if you go in like our forums at the top, there's like an image that says, like Warriors of Iron established 2001, that kind of stuff. Just something like a little background image or something like that, and then it says the heading. So for ranks, for the houses and families, setting for the guilds one, each of those would be replaced. Instead of just the word, it'll be an image heading that says that word on it. So I think might look a little bit better, maybe even make it a little bit easier to navigate, hopefully. So that shouldn't be too hard to do. And yeah, I think that's about it. There's a few other updates. Ricky updated the Dippity lineage chart. I think I updated that everywhere. If anybody sees it and it looks out of date, let me know. But I'm pretty sure I got it on the website, on all the spots in the forums, and on Discord. It should be updated everywhere. And yeah, so we did that. I updated the intro to House Dippity. I do need to add the new Sindar coat of arms still. That's one thing I need to add that to. It's on Uko, I think, and the codex on the forums, but I need to add that to the intro to House Dippity thing, which is sort of like little brochures we have for each house. We're trying to put together, and those are pinned in, or just listed in rules. So, yeah, we'll work on that. Still, Scribes Guild, we're still working on doing some codex updates, that kind of thing. Trying to get, again, I guess the ultimate goal is every member of WA listed in the codex. I think it'd be really cool. I mean, it's one nice thing, I think, if you get a new recruit to be able to say, like, hey, look, here's you on the lineage chart, and here's you in the codex. That kind of makes them feel cool, And so I think that's a kind of a nice thing we can do for new recruits. But yeah, other than that, that's about it. So I guess let's open it up to anybody who wants to bring anything up. Questions, ideas, concerns, thoughts? perhaps.
Does it always have to be me?
uh, so it seems.
Did we want to discuss Warband? Uh, or is that something that we were keeping in the Huskarl moot?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say something about that. So, I did bring it up because we were kind of, it's been on my mind and we were discussing it, mostly in terms of warband codexes or codices and how those have been working. And I think, on the one hand, there's been some really cool stuff. I mean, I feel like most of the Huskarls are producing some really cool content for the codexes and whatnot, but I think there was some concern that we're not like people aren't as invested into the warbands as we want them to be. But I think people brought up some good counterpoints to me in this Huskarl Moot channel we have, which is basically, I mean, it's everybody that's in the all thing, right? But it's a separate channel created specifically with regards to Huskarls. So the topic of the conversation is warbands, Huskarls, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think fair point. We want to kind of wait and see still with that and see what happens, and we also kind of want to. I mean, I think one thing I think it was Solite who said is that even if we work hard, we make all this cool stuff for the codexes, not necessarily will everyone in the warbands be super invested in the codex and super invested in the warband, and that also that one of the most important parts of the codex is not necessarily that it will get members to stick around, but because it's history that we're recording about each warband, which I think is a good point. So I think we'll probably just continue. It's in the handbook right now. It's going to be in the new updated handbook that we're gunning for one entry per month in the Warband Codexes, which I don't think is too bad. I mean, it can just be like a little, just Huskarl or somebody like a berserker or somebody that they ask to do it. Or it can be anybody in the warband really. They just have to figure out who can even just make some sort of diary entry kind of thing. Like I've been doing a little bit of that in something called the Chronicle of House Dippity. If you're not in House Dippity, you probably can't see it, but it's in the right. I know you can't see it. It's in the House Dippity subforum. It's just like a thread where anybody in House Dippity can just kind of post in it just like their random thoughts, with the idea being that over many years it will give you sort of a nice insight into the personal thoughts of various Dippity members over the years throughout these eras in WA. So I just kind of use it as sort of a bit of a WA diary kind of thing. I'll say, hey, this happened today. We did this and did this. Seems like this is going okay. I hope we get to do this, etc. That kind of thing. So my hope is that for those maybe who are running out of ideas for codexes or something, that's one option. But really, it can be anything related to your warband. It can just be you can stream stuff, like stream stuff and then make a VOD or whatever, put it on YouTube, post a link. That's a codex entry. Take a screenshot, whatever. Just talk about some game you played that night. With just the idea being that it is just a record of what happened in that warband, so we have something to go back to, and maybe something that people in the warband will get excited by too. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at for those anyway. But yeah, that's a good point. I did want to bring up that we had discussed that. Not that I was like panicking, like oh no, we got to get rid of codexes, but that I did want to talk frankly about it, and I think that some good reasons for keeping it as is, at least for the foreseeable future, were brought up.
I think haven't fully given warbands a shot. They're still coming into, they're still dealing with their identities and stuff like, and there's also the fact that, like I said previously in the Huskarl Moot, is previous groups within WA had competition. They were like originally there were groups and they were all on StarCraft, so they'd all fight each other. Blah blah blah. We don't have that interaction right now, and we're still dealing with those issues. But I think we're in a good place. We had this conversation once before a while back, halfway through the Viking era, and it's like, okay, the war bands are not working, and it's because we were focusing on them not being groups game specific, and then we changed that, and it's I think it's working better this way. um eh, we still haven't given that a full shot. It hasn't even been a year, so I think we keep going like this, we will eventually have what we want, or close to what we want.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I think I have a tendency to be constantly reevaluating these kind of stuff, but I mean, yeah, warbands is true. We've got just about coming on tomorrow, actually, 11 months of warbands existing. And when they were first created, they weren't even anything like this now. So we probably just got a few months of them being game specific. So, yeah, I mean, it really, it's true. You're right. It's probably not a very good sample size. I think we would at least want to give them, I would say, 1.5 years, maybe. If we're just going by past WA eras, we look back at like the Third Fleet era, right? That was about 1.5 years, a little bit extra, about 1 year and 7 or 8 months or so, where we look back and we say, hey, platoons and divisions were existed for that whole time, and I felt like they worked pretty well. And yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I think that warbands right now are working a lot better than when we first started this era back in March. So, I mean, fair point there for sure. That I think we've made a lot of strides. I don't know. I feel like as a clan, we're doing pretty well. I mean, it's easy to like stop like one given day and like we hit a bump in the road or whatever. But I think overall, things are going pretty well. I had this feeling that our like membership was dwindling the last month or two, but I actually looked and I think we're at like 113, something like that, which is actually like 30 people more than we had like a couple months ago. So honestly, it's been going really well, and I mean credit to everybody involved. Of course, everybody's I think overall doing a great job.
I isn't is it just me, or and I'm just basing off historical things because I'm still new in the grand scheme of things, but this seems like the most stable era so far.
It's
Yes. Yeah.
it's debatable, but I would say yes. I think if you look at, I mean, I think WA is a clan that we're always going to run into some drama here and there. I think that's just something with the internet, gaming clans. It's something you can't avoid. But I think we've done pretty well. It's a lot less bumpy than it used to be. We're not running into Ragnaroks and rebellions or whatever. We're not hacking people's clan channels in StarCraft. We're not having any of that, which I think yeah, that makes a good case for it being a lot more stable. And yeah, I mean, the membership is pretty good. I know when we had the census back, oh, well, let's see, it would have been 2018. I think the beginning of 2018. Maybe it was January, February 2018, if I'm not mistaken. We had something like 45-ish members. So, I mean, we've more than doubled that. And I think also I really, really like the organization we had. I mean, honestly, I think, and I can only take like part of the credit because it was the whole all thing that we built this whole system we're using that we started using back in March over many months of debate and discussion and super long arguments and stuff like that. Where it wasn't all like happy team building brainstorming, but in the end we did build this system, and even then a lot of people were not happy with it, with the final product that we had, and we said, well, okay, we have to do something, so we're going to roll this out. And I think in the end we did create something that works pretty well. I think this is one of the better systems WA has had, and a lot of it is mimicking previous WA systems too, like divisions, platoons, great companies, war bands. But I think we do have a great system and a pretty good. I mean, if you look at the handbook and everything, the way we have stuff set up, I think it works pretty well now. I think it's one of the more successful things that we've had happen as a clan. So I think that, yeah, I think we're in a good spot.
I think most of that argument was from Numenor, who's now exiled. So
It was a factor, and I think I said before that Numenor would go and critique stuff a lot. I mean, I don't think anybody can debate that, right? I mean, he would be willing to critique stuff readily, and it's not necessarily all bad. I mean, I think that, yeah, like I said, I credit everybody who was in the all thing at that time with helping to create this system. Absolutely. I mean, it's hard to like go back and say, okay, you get this percent of the credit or whatever, but I think the end product we created is pretty good, I'd say. Well, does anybody have anything else they want to bring up? As I understand it, at the end of this, we'll have a talk by Khan about the Vargur, which should be cool. But before that, everything else?
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking to start some inter warband events. So I'd like if anyone has a league-based warband to hit me up if we can get some 5v5s going or something. Something to bring that rivalry spark back to the system.
Trying to think. I can't think. Maybe I don't know if we could get a specific warband team going, but maybe we can combine a few people from Kolgas and Harans to do that.
Yeah, that'd work. Could even just have the league players from Iger versus the league players Iran.
That sounds like a great idea. I think we were actually talking about this in Huskarl was the fact that back in the day, you look at the Eye of Odin, that was all StarCraft Brood War, right? We had Thor's Hammer, we had the Teutonic Order, we had Loki's Strife. A lot of rivalry actually between those, and it carried on for a while when there is the successor platoons like Adipity Platoon A and the Dane Platoon and stuff. I think that's something good. I mean, you don't want it to get nasty or anything like that, but it makes people care about their warband more, and I think it's a cool feeling. People have some pride in it, and they want to win and stuff like that. As long as it doesn't get taken too far, I think that's a really good idea. And I mean, that's a great point with League of Legends. It's probably the one game that a bunch of warbands share where there's probably that opportunity for some, 5v5s and stuff like that. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I typed this out at some point, but like, I feel like if we grow our warbands more in the games that we focus on and like keep recruiting on them, then we'll eventually be able to build more warbands that share the same game, and that'll result in competition returning. Because I know there's probably just as many people in WA who won't play League as there are who will play League. So like, there's opportunity for like every game. I feel if people just get on recruiting and stuff. I think that's the key. It's not easy though.
For sure.
Were
Well,
you in a wind tunnel?
he's somewhere.
I'm driving home from class.
Gotcha.
Driving, you say?
Well, does anybody have anything else they want to bring up? I think League Custom sounds good.
Since we're on the topic, because I would love to have my warband participate in something like. Unfortunately, the two games that I focus on are cooperative and are not shared with anyone else in the clan. Aren't there games like I don't know browser-based games, something stupid like we used to play in for game night that we could use to have war bands compete against one another. I just sorry.
Coolmathforkids.com.
I don't know. I would love to participate in something like that. I just don't have the membership or the games to do so.
Anyone can play a jet ski edition.
Hey man, League of Legends is free. Get your
I'm pretty sure a lot of the people are in my warband specifically to avoid.
That's
League.
fair. Yeah, I think there are. I made a note of it here, but there should be some games we can find, that we can share like that, whether it's something, free and browser-based, something like that. It's definitely something we can look at, especially around the anniversary. We might look at, because we both wanted to have a house war, which will probably be the second Cure thing, and a Warband competition as well, which would be the second Yarn Rift. So I think it'd definitely be cool to do both those, and maybe we can do one sooner than the other so that they're kind of spaced out. I'm not sure, but the house war I can definitely see working better, just because if you divide this up by houses, there's definitely some games in common shared across houses. But if you divide this up by warbands, obviously it's more of a challenge. So I guess I'm open to any ideas from anybody. If anybody can come up with games that will be shared, across warbands, or that everybody could play. And I can write those down, and we can work on putting together maybe just like a list of valid battlefields that you can challenge people on for a warband competition.
We'd have to look.
Worms Battlefield.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's Worms Battlefield.
Haven't played Worms in years. We'd have to look. I'd recommend we look back on the archives for all of the game nights we did with Elvald that he hosted, because there was a lot of free to play games that we played through, and I can't remember all of them, but there was a decent amount that were interesting, fun, and could be potential games we could play.
I know that one was Town of Salem, but I'd have a hard time seeing how you could turn that competitive.
Compared to Town of Salem exists, don't even try to question that.
I mean, you could play a bunch of games and see like who wins, I suppose, but that would be like there's people that play it competitively like online against other people, right? Like it's like ranked League of Legends or whatever. You play a lot and you go up the ladder, but it might be a bit of a challenge to have. I guess we could just play a bunch of Town of Salem and like rank people in terms of performance, I guess, and earn some kind of points for that.
I was just joking. A ranked Town of Salem is just stupid. Gary's mod would be the best ranked game, of course.
Right, Town of Salem does exist, but I don't think I would play it. All right, well we can take a long time to people can always brainstorm and message me later on, today, any days, whatever, and we can put together a list of some good candidates for that. Yeah, and look at doing one of those two. Either House War or Warband competition, or both, like I said, but maybe spaced out somewhat. Probably the House War it would be in June is my first instinct.
It wouldn't be. It wouldn't need to be even the competition. I would like to. Why is Anarian repeating me? Stop it!
What?
I can hear myself.
What the fuck? Sorry.
It's very confusing.
My bad.
Sounds a little panic. My voice.
What I was trying to say is, it doesn't necessarily need to be one of those official competitions. I'd just like to have a bit more interaction between warbands, and I'd be willing to work with another Huskarl to have our members, meet up on a weekend and play a specific, very neutral game that's like kind of dumb or something that everyone could enjoy. That's not too competitive, and it's just like, hey, this person won, and it's like, okay, cool. It'd be fun. That's just all I'm saying.
You want a dumb game people can compete in? Osu.
Wow.
Yikes.
Right
Don't
as I
let-
get here. Right
Don't
as I
let
get
Lulu
here.
here.
I'm fucking smacked. Oh.
Hey, don't listen to him, Lulu. I got your back, man.
No, I'm actually being kind of serious. Like, I saw Lulu hop in, and I'm like, oh crap, he plays Osu. That actually looks kind of interesting. Like, that could actually be, a pretty good idea for a neutral game for people to compete in and have fun with. It's not one that can be taken too seriously.
It's not free to
This
play,
is
right?
true.
Whoever
Is
has
it free to play?
Xbox.
It is free to play. Very free.
Oh,
It is. That's what I thought. Okay.
so
Yeah,
we can be
uh,
bad together. Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
And then everybody starts, and then I'll see you guys in 8 months when everybody is RSI like me.
I think you have to play with one hand. I think that's the handicap now.
Actually, I can do that. That would be hilarious.
God
I
almighty.
actually do that. When I play with people who just start, I play flashlight mouse only.
All right. Well, I think we've got a pretty good list of games, potential candidates, and like I said, we can take some more time to come up with that. So, anybody have anything else they want to bring up before we move on to Khan's talk?
Are we talking about like mutual games, or you can free games that we can all have like a little bit of a competition in?
Yeah, we're gonna have an inner warband competition. We're just kind of throwing out some ideas, but I don't know when, but at some point, that's the hope. We had one last time, and it didn't work very well. But part of that was because we did it right after a house war, so people kind of tired out.
Fun thing I was thinking. This is not a free game, but it's a pretty fun game. It's a pretty old one too. Anybody heard of Supreme Commander Forged Alliance?
Well, as you said, let's brainstorm games later.
Okay.
I did just write that one down. But yeah, we'll talk about. I mean, we just talk about it in Meat Hall too. I'm just coming up with games, but yeah, it sounded like we're probably pretty set in terms of other stuff to talk about. So I think we'll just hand it off to you, Con, if you want to talk about the Varger.
Zach, let me just take a shot real quick. All right. Well, a lot of the info on the Varger is lost to PMs because unfortunately, not a lot of it was passed on to me per se. Like, so I was a product of one of the newer knighting programs that Arctis made. So a lot of this info is going to be from when I was a knight onwards. But what I can tell you from the old Knight Order is the earliest Vargar. So the first Vargar, and I believe the Vargar started somewhere in the Third Fleet era. Does that sound about right, Vess?
I think that's correct. Honestly, I don't know, but I recall there not being any Vargar when I was first in the clan, and I believe it was something that came about during that time because I was recruited during the Third Fleet era. But it's hard to know exactly because a lot of the Night Order is very secretive, so I obviously wasn't in the loop with the Vargar.
Yeah. So anyways, a lot of what the Vargar did was just try to focus on expanding Commander and regrowing Commander, which was a recurring theme in our house because we were constantly dying out and coming back from the brink. So that was sort of the focus of the Vargar to keep us from dying out. So in terms of lineage for the Vargar, the first Vargar was Darkwolf, followed by Arctis, Vargar, Branderwolf, Vidrolf, Rickwrecker, aka Paramver, then Frostlifer, my recruiter, followed by Offner and myself. And then after me, it was Brandolfer, who is one of the other last remaining Vargar. So as a whole, our focus was pretty simple. Expand WA's borders, expand our house. There was a lot of the Vargas history is a lot of internal drama about how things should be led. But as you guys know, with the Sega Stone Stars, myself and Offner butted heads a lot. So this made so you could almost say that like a lot of what led to the Stone Star splitting was sort of started in like the Vargar PMs between constant arguments between myself and Offner. And when they left, that was about the end of the Vargar order. Everything else is just lost to time PMs. As you can see, I didn't write out a speech.
Well, it's cool to have that insight. I mean, I think the Night Orders, I think most people can agree, are one of the most interesting parts of WA. And it's always cool to learn more. And myself, I'm always interested in what went on behind the scenes with the Jade Falcons and the Rangers and the Varga, because I was, with the White Knights. Obviously, I know what was going on with us, but because each Night Order, was so secretive, and there's a little bit. If you check on Vesperger's archives, shout out to the one named after me. There's a little bit I wrote about the White Knights and something how we had secret forums, that kind of stuff. So that was something very common with Night Orders was being behind the scenes, which makes it all the more kind of mysterious and interesting, to learn anything we can about them. But it would be cool to uncover more about not just the Vargar but all of them, because I mean, like I said, kind of a lot of it lost to PMs. Maybe those people, I don't know if we'll get somebody come back. Dark Wolf comes back or something.
Yeah. There's also a bit of training that was actually unique to the Varger. For the last stage of your training, you'd actually be exiled from the clan for a month to try and build a platoon by yourself.
I vaguely remember hearing about that. I don't know how or where I saw it.
You're actually, in order to pass this final test, you weren't to contact anyone else in the clan besides like your night trainer.
Wow.
I actually um, didn't have to completely build my own because at the time I was second in command of the Valkyries, and at the time Ulfold was leaving, so I didn't want to sort of leave the Valkyries on its own to die out. So instead of being banished to completely some unknown game, I got to stay there and do my duties as the new leader of the Valkyries.
Very cool.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Um, are you able to tell us a bit more about what the training entailed aside from that final step? Because I know that the Night Orders were a little difficult to get into in certain cases.
Yeah, so for the Varger, basically everyone in Commander wanted to join at some point. Anyone who is like into the clan field, the house field, wanted to be a Varger if they were part of Commander. So we actually had quite a few people joining. We had a subforum set aside for night applications, and when Vidrolf came back and started growing his Smite platoon, we had quite a few new Varger from there that were there for like a month or two, disappeared, and then a few months after, I believe, Asperger abolished the Knights, if I'm thinking of the timeline correctly. But as for training, I assume it's pretty similar to what the other Knights did, where you had basic leadership tests. Like your Knight trainer would ask you, how would you deal with these situations? And he'd give you a bunch of scenarios that you had to answer, come up with your own solution for. Like, what would you do if X member did this and brought up this point to you? And then you'd have to sort of find out the best way to deal with that situation. And in addition to that, we had to know about the history of WA. So like a lot of what the Jarls have to know now, like all like the different histories from the Daynetta and stuff, we had to go back, read those stories, and explain their relevance to Commander and the clan as a whole. So we'd actually go and read the saga of House Dippity and the saga of the White Knights and stuff as a required part of our training.
Are the Varga the most recent of the Knights?
I'm not exactly sure because I was never told, and yeah, I guess it is, but I couldn't tell you when the Vargar was created because nobody told me, and I can't find it written anywhere.
Yeah, unfortunately, the dates were lost. I know we were told, and it was explained to me, that the order... Basically, it's sort of a little bit weird because, for example, Dane talked about how the Rangers existed prior to officially existing. There was Rangers that worked for Dane, the same way that, like, House Dane didn't exist officially till the First Empire era. But, of course, there's a bunch of people that Dane recruited who are around starting from 2001. So there's 4 years there where an informal House Dane kind of existed. So I think a lot of the dates and stuff like that are kind of mixed up and that kind of, cloudy stuff. But as far as I know, the White Knights were the first officially created Knight Order, followed by the Rangers, and then the Jade Falcons, and then the Vargar. But yeah, honestly, I mean, I'm not 100% sure, man. That's one of a billion things I'd love to know that I think everybody who would know about it either forgot or they're not here anymore.
And according to Vidrolf, Vargar is actually a typo.
Oh, really?
It was just supposed to be Varg.
I can see that because of the Old Norse thing of making things plural sometimes with R. I think is something. Maybe that was how it got. Like you are a Varg and these are the Varger, like the Vargs, kind of. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
but I would think I much prefer Varger to Varg.
It
Yeah,
sounds cooler.
it has a good sound to it.
So was there a specific task that you needed to do once you were a knight? Because you said it was like, quelling a lot of the infighting and stuff like that. Was that it?
No. Eventually, our focus was just to expand WA to like new games, like where games where people weren't playing. So like Vidril, for example, noticed there wasn't a Smite or Warframe platoon, so he went and did those things. And then, like I said, I was on War Thunder. Offner was on World of Tanks, so a lot of what the Farger did was platoon building and supporting existing platoons.
Cool.
Well, awesome. I think that was a great talk. Some cool insight. But yeah, I think we'll probably sign off a Fireside with that, unless anybody's any final closing thoughts or questions or anything.
No, we're good.
You sound a little bit desperate.
Sorry, I'm not a great public speaker.
We have
I think
league to
that's fine.
play.
Alrighty. Well, thanks everyone for showing up, and we will see you next week, next Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific for Fireside Chat 49. Then a week from then will be the big 5-0. We'll have to come up with something to do. We'll see. So, see you guys then.